I got my first off-the-track thoroughbred at age 16. I was naive to how these horses were trained on the track and what it took to retrain them. It was a steep learning curve, but I loved every second of it. Since then, almost every horse I've purchased has been off the track. I was given the opportunity to work as an exercise rider, galloping currently racing thoroughbreds at age 19. This was a huge step forward in honing the craft of retraining thoroughbreds. Again, a steep learning curve, but after I caught on, the learning never stopped, and it has really molded how I train my thoroughbreds today. Getting into galloping is how I met George. I first started working with him at the beginning of 2018, where he was a 3-year-old unraced thoroughbred training for his first start. He moved like a show horse, fancy and with suspension, polite in the bridle, rhythmic gaits, stunning, easily one of the nicest horses in the barn from a showing perspective. I did not have the chance to gallop him too much because he was at the track in town much of the year, while I worked at the farm, but he certainly made an impression. George had 11 starts in 2018 and won only one of those starts.
Silvino Morales back aboard. They're at the post. There they go. Closely bunched. It's Stormy Night, though, who's put right on the early lead. Driving up on the extreme outside now as they pass by us now for the first time is Anzac Day. Under the line for the first time. Fashionable Gold now skims the rail and puts pressure on Stormy Night. These two now clear by 2.5. Down towards the inside, it is Bionic who gets away in third. On the outside, Blame It on Whiskey in fourth. Anzac Day is fifth. Down towards the inside, it's Postman in sixth. 2 for the back is Silver Dude and Cryptonotus. Long way back to the trailer now, Beauty Boy Roy. Opening quarter comes up in 22-4 as they race towards the far turn. It's Fashionable Gold out there with the lead. Moving into challenge now on the outside is Blame It on Whiskey. Bionic is hustled along in third, followed by Anzac Day in fourth. At the rail, Postman, he's only 4 off the lead, followed by Silver Dude. Cryptonotus, the half went in 46-4 as they turn for home now. Fashionable Gold, pressure coming on the extreme outside now as they run to the wire by Bionic. And Bionic has taken off, opened up by
While his racing career wasn't completely devoid of success, with $17,000 in earnings, George retired at the end of the season in 2018 after his trainer, who is also both his owner and breeder, decided he was best suited to a show home. She offered him to me and I accepted, with the intention to enter George in the Thoroughbred Makeover for 2019. George did have a wind puff after his last race, and his owner chose to x-ray just to be sure, and found a bone chip. Initially, the first vet opinion was that the chip was out of the joint and would set on its own. I took the chance on him. After getting a second vet opinion about a week later, we found that the chip had already moved and was in the joint, and needed to be removed before it caused more damage. From there, we x-rayed his remaining fetlocks to make sure that there were no more chips and found a slab fracture in each of his hind legs. These fractures needed surgery to be cleaned up and have a small surgical screw put in to secure them back to the parent bone in order to speed up and guarantee proper healing. This diagnosis made George's racing name, Bionic, exceedingly ironic, much to my dismay. Now, as scary as these injuries sound, the prognosis for them was actually quite good after surgery, and in a lot of ways they were more rehabable than bad tendon injuries, which is why I decided to take the chance on George. George's injuries were so unique that the surgeon that was in charge of his case said that she's not seen anything like this in BC, and maybe only 1 or 2 other cases countrywide. These surgeries are more commonly performed in the UK, and George, quite literally, was one of a kind in terms of the injuries he sustained. His x-rays were sent to a surgeon in the UK for a second opinion, as well as a surgeon down in Colorado for a third opinion. As you can imagine, this put a damper on my plans for the makeover. However, with the 3 to 4 month healing and rehab period, it was still doable. So I gritted my teeth and decided to go ahead with surgery, well aware of just how expensive a horse George had become. As if George didn't already have enough struggles, the screw going into his left hind broke during surgery, and the shards were so small that the surgeons needed to get new equipment to pull them out. He was temporarily stitched up, then had to be put back under general anesthetic a few days later to have the broken pieces removed. When he was waking up after the second surgery, he hit his face and caused nerve damage on his lip on the left side. As a result, his lip twitches and hangs a little lower on this side. Aside from this, the surgery went well and his prognosis remained quite the same, with 2 months of stall rest, then paddock turnout, with eventually resuming into a rehab program after about 3 months. Putting a horse on stall rest, especially one who is racing fit, is no easy task. George was such a well-behaved young man that for the most part, our hand walks were perfectly manageable despite him being fit and locked in a stall all day, aside from his walks. Also, the fact that it was winter in Canada certainly didn't help him with keeping his sanity. Because George was such a gentleman of a 3-year-old, we made it through most of our hand walking without ever needing to use sedation. Near the end of his stall rest period, some of his walks did require sedation as he was getting too fresh, and we didn't want his playfulness to impede his healing. In mid-February, after numerous follow-up x-rays, George was given the clear to start walking under saddle as part of his rehab sets. He was stiff, fat, and out of shape, but happy to start doing something other than standing in his stall. Inexplicably, he was shorter on the right hind, and after numerous diagnostics and follow-up x-rays of other joints, as well as his injured ones, the vet said to continue his rehab program and see how it helped work out his stiffness. Near the end of February, George was finally allowed to start going out in a small paddock on his own, which made him incredibly happy. As part of his rehab program, George had to walk 20 minutes every single day. This made it difficult in Canada only having an outdoor arena, so we had to walk in some very inclement weather, but I was determined to get his rehab program going so that we could make it to the makeover. Eventually, George was allowed to leave his tiny paddock turnout and go out into the arena during the day, then back into his stall at night. He got my rescue pony as a turnout partner because the pony was friendly and unlikely to kick. This made George a very happy camper. Near the middle of March, George was allowed to start adding short sets of trotting into his rehab program. He still moved stiffly, but we were determined to get him going so he could start moving more comfortably. Being stalled for so long while compensating for injuries and growing made it difficult for him, especially since he was 17 hands and growing like a weed. He also put himself quite out chiropractically from resting his injured legs so much, causing his pelvis to tilt. This was something that would take months of chiro and other fitness work to really start fixing. When we could start lengthening our trot sets, I brought George to work with me so he could do his conditioning sets on the racetrack. This really helped when we started adding canter too, because it allowed him to canter a long time in a straight line and with much wider turns. George was always such a gentleman at the track and never got racy. When spring finally came to Canada, I started taking George off-property more for trail rides, as well as his first time schooling off-property at Thunderbird Show Park. He was always cool as a cucumber and acted like he'd been there, done that. The hardest challenge for him was just standing still for an extended period of time, but so long as he was kept busy, even if it was just walking on a loose rein, he virtually never set a foot wrong. As the weather continued to improve, we got more down to business and I could start asking more of him. For George, all of our problems have always been physical, never mental. I was never too concerned about getting extensive show experience with him because he really just didn't care about busy show atmospheres. So the focus was just on getting him fit and having consistent chiropractic work and veterinary checkups to make sure he was feeling his best. After surgery, he was given legend injections into the joints that were operated on to help with any remaining soreness, but his x-rays showed fully healed joints as well as good hocks and stifles when we x-rayed those too, just in case. Obviously, I was paranoid about how he was feeling because we checked everything, honestly. When I first introduced bridle-less riding, George acted like he had done it before, completely unfazed, as he was with most things. His sensibility and great mind continued to impress me again and again. The more I worked with him, the more I wanted to talk about his injuries and rehab to help promote the idea that these broken thoroughbreds can make great athletes and are worth considering. Lots of injuries are fixable and so many great horses are turned down on the basis that they will never come sound, even when they don't have very severe injuries. When the real issue is that people don't want to put the time or money into helping them out, even if it yields long-term results. People expect to get a perfect horse with perfectly clean x-rays and no injuries and spend pennies on said horse. It's completely unreasonable and I think we really need to change our thought process when it comes to injuries. When I was given another off-the-track thoroughbred, Cherokee Warchant, he and George became great friends. I taught George how to pony using Chico, and once again, George was entirely unfazed. In late May, I was able to start jumping George over small fences after he underwent yet another veterinary exam to ensure his soundness and comfort. When I took him off property to check out some small logs on the cross-country course for the first time, he was once again unfazed. George continued to do basically whatever he was asked to do without an issue. George's first show over fences was the most excited he has ever gotten off property. It was his first time coursing, and being a small schooling show at low heights, the courses were easy with lots of space between the fences for him to extend his already enormous stride. He was afraid of the fillers that were left along the side of the arena, and was more forward and racehorse-like than he had ever been. Even still, he was quite easy to handle and definitely tried his best. He was just clumsy and too forward. All it really took for George to get over his fear of fillers was that one time seeing them in the show ring. From then on, he was pretty unconcerned of scary jumps and very adaptable off-property, showcasing the incredible and sensible nature of his mind. Initially, my hope for the thoroughbred makeover was to compete George in freestyle and show jumping. I had an amazing and complicated freestyle routine that I had thought up that I really wanted to demonstrate in Kentucky. But as summer came and makeover drew closer, I grew nervous of the demands of said freestyle. Not wanting to have to stress last minute or potentially overface my horse, I made the decision to make my second discipline dressage instead of freestyle. In July, I entered George in the .75 meter jumpers at his first A-rated show at Milner Downs. This was only his third jumping show ever. His first class was an optimum time class, which he promptly won, being only 1 second off of the optimum time. His second class was a speed round, which he placed third in. George handled the busy atmosphere of a rated show like a pro, minus the standing patiently outside the in-gate, but honestly, who really cares? George continued to improve and impress me. Throughout the summer, we have mainly worked on his dressage work and over small grids. In August, we encountered yet another speed bump when he came up quite out in the lumbar area of his back, after we started using another chiropractor who is more experienced. He had little motion in this area, particularly for his age, and his pelvis was still off kilter. I scratched him from our next jumping show as a result and put him in a dressage-only program and a tight chiropractic schedule. After 3 chiropractic sessions, he gained significantly more motion in his back. The toll of compensating for his previous injuries is something his body is still working its way out of, and as he learns how to move more correctly and gain strength, he continues to improve. However, I stay on the ball with his chiropractic appointments to ensure his comfort. Recently, George has been started into a jumping program once again after receiving the all clear from the chiropractor, who is also a vet. He is a little rusty but is coming back into it very well. We also had a bitting specialist come out to fit and assess him for a better bit, given his nerve damage issues. With the makeover just under 3 weeks away now, I do feel that we are behind most competitors given our speed bumps, however, not as much as I would expect we would be with the time we lost. I hope that in sharing George's story, people will consider horses like him as their next riding horse. His brain is truly phenomenal and not something that can be trained or bought. It's just the way he is. It would have been unfortunate to see a horse like him fall through the cracks and lose out on the opportunity of finding a show home over injuries that were entirely fixable. The journey to getting him where he is today has not been fast or cheap, but at the end of the day, I have a horse who will go on to make a phenomenal, easy, no-prep show horse for junior and amateur riders alike. I hope George can be an ambassador for thoroughbreds and their ability to rebound from injury, as well as how hard they try for their owners. George leaves for Kentucky on September 26th and will be traveling over 4,000 kilometers from British Columbia, Canada, to Lexington, Kentucky. He will arrive in Kentucky on the 30th of September. We are helping fundraise the costs associated with his hauling by selling shirts that reference his racing name, as well as other equine-related designs that you can find in the link down below. We are also having an open house at our farm on September 22nd, where people can come and have lunch and meet George and Milo. We would love to have your support in our journey to Kentucky. We are the only team coming from British Columbia, and it is quite the trek. Check out our fundraising options down below in the description. I hope George's story resonates with some of you and that you continue to appreciate the thoroughbred breed and their stoicism and ability as athletes. They are truly phenomenal horses, and while George's journey hasn't been easy, I certainly don't regret it. Thank you for following our journey so far, and I hope to see some of you guys down in Kentucky at the Thoroughbred Makeover.